Stage lights blazed down on George Strait, a stark brightness that left him squinting as he faced the cheering crowd. Applause rose like a wave, a sound that once felt like home. But tonight, a disquieting emptiness lurked beneath the surface. He smiled, but it felt forced, a mask over the hollowness growing in his chest. As he strummed the familiar opening chord of his latest hit, a wave of nostalgia washed over him. The voices of the crowd blended into a single melody, and despite their enthusiasm, George felt like a ghost. Each note echoed with hollow expectation, tugging painfully at his heart, reminding him of a simpler time, before fame cocooned him in its demanding embrace. He could almost hear the memory of his younger self, running through sun-soaked fields, singing to the Texas wind. Joy poured from his lips back then, unencumbered by pressures that now loomed large. Those carefree moments felt like blurred relics, fading in the glow of bright lights. As the chorus approached, panic swept over him. The comforting rhythm slipped away as doubt wrapped its fingers around his thoughts. For a brief moment his fingers faltered, and he grimaced, grappling for control. He could almost feel the audience's warmth, but the pressure felt suffocating, an invisible weight pressing against his chest. The final chords echoed into the silence that followed, and as cheers erupted, it felt like the world spun around him. He waved, returning their love with a hollow smile, but sought refuge backstage where the noise faded. Pressing his back against the cool wall, George struggled to breathe. The adrenaline that once buoyed him now felt heavy, anchoring him to a strange despair. Driving home would stretch on endlessly, an inevitable journey marred by uncertainty and a gnawing sense of lost purpose. The Texas roads unfurled before him, a dark ribbon twisting through the night. As he wrestled with his thoughts, stars twinkled like distant memories above. How had he grown so distant from himself? What had stolen his joy? A flicker of movement caught his eye, a figure at the edge of an abandoned barn. Curiosity drew him closer, and he parked, stepping out into the cool night. As he approached, the reality of a dilapidated horse hit him like a wave. There stood Daisy, a shadow of a once majestic creature. Her coat hung listless, her frame frail. For a moment, time stood still as their eyes met, hers dull and vacant, his filled with an unexpected empathy. "Hey there, girl," he murmured softly, extending his hand, his heart open to the connection that shimmered unspoken between them. The silence wrapped around them, binding their souls in shared solitude. In that moment, George felt a flicker of hope, a whisper that perhaps together they could begin to heal. The sun rose slowly over the Texas plains, painting the sky with shades of gold and crimson. George sat in his truck, the engine idling softly as he watched the dawn break, illuminating the silhouette of the barn that held Daisy. The memories of the night before lingered, the haunting gaze of the neglected horse etching itself into his mind. He felt an unexpected pull to return. Perhaps the morning light would bring clarity. As he stepped into the barn, the cool air greeted him like an old friend. Daisy stood in the corner, eyes still weary yet full of a quiet resilience. The contrast between her frail state and the spirit he sensed within her resonated deeply with him. Kneeling before her, George offered a gentle touch to her mane, a silent promise of care. In that moment, memories washed over him, a stream of images from his childhood, as they often did when he sought solace. He remembered running through fields with laughter spilling from his lips, the smell of freshly cut hay wrapping around him like a warm embrace. His grandmother had always loved to sing while working, her voice harmonizing with the sweet sound of nature. "Have you ever heard about my first horse, Misty?" he whispered, as if Daisy could understand. "I would race her across the fields, my heart full of joy." Those were simpler times. He could see himself in his mind's eye, a small boy with a big dream. How everything felt possible back then, unrestricted by the constraints of adulthood and fame. As George spoke, the sun climbed higher, casting soft light through the barn's slats. He felt a connection forming, not just with Daisy, but with the essence of his youth that he had forgotten in the rush of his career. The love for music that had ignited in his heart as a child began to flicker back to life, inviting him to reclaim the joy that once flowed like a river. He recalled singing with friends around a campfire, the stars gazing down with admiration. Those nights were magic, filled with unfiltered laughter and dreams, untainted by the expectations that came with success. Was it possible to return to that feeling, to play for the love of the music rather than applause. With renewed determination, George spent the day with Daisy, tending to her needs. He brushed her coat, washed her with care, and whispered melodies that escaped his lips, songs he had long forgotten. "You might not recognize this tune, but it's been with me since I was a kid," he said, a hint of warmth creeping back into his heart. The words flowed with ease, wrapping around them like the sun's embrace. In the quiet moments of their connection, George heard a melody from deep within his soul. It was both haunting and beautiful, a reflection of his inner journey. He closed his eyes and let the song spill forth, revealing a vulnerability he had kept locked away for too long. As dusk approached, a glimmer of hope flickered in Daisy's eyes. Her spirit seemed to awaken, responding to the kindness George offered. He could sense it, a subtle change, a shift from neglect to something hopeful. Perhaps their paths had intertwined for a reason, two wearied souls fortifying one another, initiating a shared rebirth. Suddenly, the sound of a familiar voice broke through his reverie. Sam, the rugged stable owner, emerged from the shadows. His face bore the marks of time, yet held a wisdom that radiated like the setting sun. "Looks like you found yourself a companion there, George," he said, a warm smile creasing his weathered face. He leaned against the barn, his broad shoulders relaxed, watching George and Daisy with a knowing gaze. George smiled back, a bit sheepish. "Yeah, she seems like she needs help. I think we both do." Sam stepped closer, observing the horse, then met George's earnest eyes. Animals have a way of reflecting our own struggles. "You care for her, and in return she'll help you find your way back." George nodded, absorbing the truth in Sam's words. He sensed a kinship forming between them, two men navigating the loneliness of their own lives. "It's strange, isn't it? How lost I've felt. But being here, it feels different." Sam shifted his weight, and with a deliberate slowness, leaned against the wooden structure as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow around them. "We all have our breaking points. It's what you do after that counts. You've got a heart to mend, George, and it starts with opening up, not just to Daisy, but to yourself." The gravity of Sam's words resonated deeply within George. He had been performing for years, pouring himself into his music, yet had become a stranger to his own heart. He felt drawn to share more, with Daisy, but also with Sam, who saw deeper into his struggle. "What if I'm afraid? What if I can't find my way back?" George's voice trembled slightly, betraying the vulnerability he had tried to hide. "Fear can be a gatekeeper or a guide," Sam replied, his tone steady. "Embrace it. Let it guide you, like the stars guided you as a child. Start with the simple things, and the song will find you again." In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the barn and the gentle presence of Daisy, George felt a stirring desire to reclaim his roots. With Sam's encouragement echoing in his heart, he vowed to embark on this journey of rediscovery, one note at a time. The memory of his childhood lingered like a sweet fragrance in the air, reminding him that the path ahead, while uncertain, was rich with potential. With renewed hope, he began to hum a melody, the notes intertwining with the whispers of the evening breeze. The days turned into weeks, and George's mornings began to take on a new rhythm. With the sun rising over the Texas plains, he would head to the barn, brushing Daisy's coat and feeding her gentle oats. Each interaction with her deepened their bond, a silent understanding blossoming between them. But it was the evenings that ignited his spirit anew. The moments spent strumming his guitar under a canvas of stars brought forth a rushing flood of creativity he had long buried. It was on one such evening that George sat on a stool outside the barn, the fading light casting a golden hue over the landscape. He cradled his guitar, feeling its familiar weight against his chest, a sensation that felt both comforting and foreign all at once. A soft breeze curled around him, as if urging him to open his heart further. He began to play, the melody rolling off his fingers like water over stones. Something magical happened. A warmth spread through him, lifting the weight of doubt that had clung for too long. The simple notes wove into a tapestry of sound, a reflection of all he had experienced, of the struggle to reclaim lost joy. "Just like that," he whispered to Daisy, who stood nearby, her ears pricked and eyes alert. "So you inspire me, you know that." As he played, words flowed freely, punctuated by the ease of his memories, the laughter of friends around a campfire, the rustle of tall grass underfoot, the sound of his grandmother's soothing voice. The lyrics came alive, deeply personal and infused with raw honesty. "I've been lost in the shadows, carrying a heavy heart, but I'll find my way back. With you, I won't fall apart." The tune wrapped around him warmly, each note resonating with the essence of forgiveness he sought to offer himself. An internal shift was taking place. The music was alive within him, guiding his hand and, more importantly, guiding his heart. As the final chord lingered in the evening air, George opened his eyes, breathing deeply. He felt a sense of freedom, invigorated yet humbled by the song that had emerged from the depths of his soul. It was a promise to himself, to nourish the roots of his talent, to embrace both the fears and the dreams that coalesced within him. Days turned into months, and he continued to write, the music pouring from him like rain falling on thirsty earth. Each song became a chapter of healing, a melody marking every step of his journey back to himself. One late afternoon, as he played softly in the barn, Sam wandered by, leaning against the doorframe, a knowing smile crossing his lips. "Sounding good, George," he said, reveling in the quiet energy that filled the space. "Thanks, Sam," George replied, slightly bashful. "It's been a while since I've felt this comfortable." "Seems like you've found your voice again," Sam remarked, folding his arms. "You've reconnected not just with the music, but with who you are." George nodded, pondering the truth in Sam's observation. "It feels like I'm peeling away layers of self-doubt, discovering something raw and real beneath. It's liberating, but also frightening. Fear can be a soft siren song whispering of the past, but the music you've created is the beacon that leads you home," Sam replied, the warmth in his voice inviting George to dive deeper into his vulnerability. "That's what I've realized," George affirmed, feeling the spark of courage flicker within. He thought of all the songs yet to be written, stories waiting in the wings, echoes of life experiences echoing through his melodies. As he sat back down, he invited Sam to join him. "Want to help me with this one?" He gestured with a grin, and they began to play together, strings harmonizing with a sense of joy that reverberated through the barn. Music became their bond, a source of light in shared solitude. Each session was like a healing ritual, the laughter and camaraderie serving as a balm for wounds that life had inflicted. They turned the barn into an oasis, where creativity blossomed like wildflowers in the spring. One evening, after finishing a particularly moving song about hope, George paused, finally ready to share his journey. "There's something I need to tell you, Sam. This feels like it's more than just music to me. It's a lifeline. I lost my way for so long, but this place, Daisy, it's helping me find my way back." Sam regarded him with a calmness that spoke volumes. "That's the beauty of connecting with something greater than ourselves. Music can be a guide, a voice for the pain and the joy. You're not just finding your way back, you're paving a path for others who feel lost." As the wind danced through the barn, George recognized the profound power of their connection, two kindred spirits supporting each other in a world that often felt overwhelmingly isolating. In these moments of authenticity, he found strength, and the healing process took root deep in his being. Through music and friendship, George was awakening, a journey igniting with passion and purpose. The melodies that flowed healed not only his heart, but began to create ripples in the lives that surrounded him. In the embrace of that small barn, with stars looking down like witnesses to his rebirth, George Strait began anew, ready to share his sound, his truth, no matter where the road might lead. Morning sunlight spilled through the barn's wooden beams, igniting a sense of purpose within George. After weeks of embracing the warmth of his new routine with Sam and Daisy, he felt ready to rise again, to share the music that had become a lifeline in his journey. Tonight's open mic at the local community center would be the stage for that rebirth. "Let's go for it," George declared, a fire igniting behind his eyes. Sam's encouraging smile bolstered his confidence. "You're ready, buddy. Just remember to let your heart lead the way." As the day drifted towards evening, George stood nervously before the mirror in the dim light of his bedroom. With each minute that passed, the anticipation swelled, along with the familiar flutter in his chest. Walking out to the buzzing atmosphere of the community center, he felt the electric tremors of panic. Voices filled the air like a sonorous tide as laughter echoed and excitement thrummed with the rhythm of gentle conversation. Inside, fairy lights danced across the ceiling, illuminating a gathering of people of all ages, eagerly awaiting their chance to share their talents. The performances unfolded before him like snapshots of life, each song a window into someone's soul. George remained anchored in his thoughts, grappling with self-doubt, but he could hear Sam's voice encouraging him to breathe through the nerves. Finally, the host announced, "Next up, we have George Strait." As he stepped onto the stage, a hush fell over the crowd, eyes now focused on him. The microphone stand felt solid beneath his trembling fingers. "Hi, everyone. I'm George Strait," he said, clearing his throat. "Tonight, I'd like to share some songs I've written." As the first chords of his guitar reverberated through the room, George began to play. The familiar strings sang under his fingers like old friends, pulling him into a warm embrace. With each stroke, the apprehension dissipated, replaced by a sense of freedom. He poured his heart into his lyrics, weaving in tales of loss, rediscovery, and hope. The audience leaned in, their attention unwavering, and George surrendered to the moment. The music flowed from his soul, filling the space with a deeply personal narrative. With each song, he felt a release, shedding layers of isolation and doubt like dead skin. He was no longer just a performer. He was a storyteller, sharing his truth with open-hearted vulnerability. As the final chord lingered in the air, silence enveloped the room for a heartbeat, before it erupted into applause. Waves of relief and exhilaration crashed over him. George took a moment to let the affirmation wash over him. "Thank you," he said, his voice catching slightly. "Thank you all for listening. It means more than I can express." When he stepped off stage, Sam met him with a proud grin. "You were incredible. That was genuine, man. You had them hanging on every word." "I can't believe I actually did it." George felt a sense of weight lift from his shoulders. Weeks flowed into a rhythm of performances for George. Each time he took the stage, there was joy in sharing his music. The connection to the audience deepened with every note played. He realized that they were not separate from his journey, but an integral part of it. The stories that unfolded during his shows tugged at the heartstrings, each song becoming a tether to the crowd's collective human experience. Among the familiar faces, he noticed was Emily, a vibrant presence who lit up the room with her laughter and warmth. Her captivating appreciation for his songs somehow brought another layer of encouragement, and George found himself drawn to her. After every performance, she would approach him, her enthusiasm infectious. "Your songs resonate so deeply," she remarked one evening, eyes sparkling. "It's like you're reaching into people's hearts without even trying." "Honestly, I didn't know anyone would feel that way about them," George replied, his gaze wandering from her to the ground, overwhelmed by her sincerity. "People need what you have to give," Emily said, stepping a bit closer. "Keep sharing your truth." Their conversations soon became a part of George's life, transforming into something beautiful, something supportive. They spent hours discussing music, dreams, and fears, often accompanied by laughter that echoed through the corners of the barn and lingered into the stillness of night. Inspired by her encouragement, George began to write new music infused with the magic of their connection. Each song reflected their shared experiences, filled with hopeful melodies and lyrics about love blossoming from unexpected places. With her encouragement, he felt an electric pulse surging through him as if they were composing their own narrative together. As George prepared for yet another performance, he couldn't shake the feeling that this one would be different. The night felt alive with possibility. "This next song is about healing and knowing you're never alone," he said, feeling the weight of the words. When the melody took off, he poured himself into every chord, weaving hope and resilience through the air. The audience swayed with him, entranced, and for a moment everything felt right in the world. It was as if they were sharing a collective heartbeat, music becoming a bridge, connecting their joys and struggles. Upon concluding the song, applause rang like a chorus of affirmation. George held onto Emily's gaze in the crowd, feeling anchored by their connection amidst the energy swirling around him. The stage had become a sacred space where emotions collided and barriers fell away. As the weeks turned into months, George continued to thrive in this new chapter of his life. His time with Emily deepened, their conversations filled with laughter, revelations, and dreams of the future. He felt like he was no longer just rediscovering his voice. He was also finding a partner with whom to share life's melodies. Under the starlit sky, George often found solace on the porch with Daisy by his side, reflecting on how far he had come. Through music and the bonds he forged, he had woven himself back into the fabric of life. He marveled at the beautiful complexity of it all, how every note played, every chord strummed, told fragments of his journey, while paving the path for new adventures yet to unfold. With every performance and every shared moment, George Strait embraced the truth he had uncovered. Life was often challenging, but in the quest for healing, love, and music, he had found a symphony worth playing, a journey worth taking. As summer unfolded in the small town, George found himself in a haze of creativity fueled by newfound confidence and purpose. The barn, once a mere refuge, had transformed into his artistic sanctuary, vibrating with the echoes of laughter and music. With each song he birthed, he felt a sense of authenticity that had been absent for too long. Yet beneath the surface of his blooming career, shadows began to creep in, unanswered questions about the future, the nagging doubts about whether this journey would last. One quiet afternoon, George strummed his guitar on the porch as the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the fields. His heart swelled with hope, but as he glanced at Emily walking toward him, a sudden unease curled in his stomach. She had been every bit the supporter and muse he needed, encouraging him to embrace his gifts fully. But that day came with a different energy. "Hey, George," Emily said, her voice tentative. "Can we talk?" "Sure," he replied, setting aside his guitar and looking at her intently. "What's on your mind?" "Things have been wonderful, and I love seeing you thrive, but I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed," she confessed, brushing her hair behind her ear, revealing a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "I've loved our time together, but I've been thinking about my own music and how I've pushed that aside." George's heart sank at the thought of losing her support, yet he sensed the weight of her words, the urge that emerged from beneath her uncertainty. "Emily, you should never feel like you have to step back for me. Your dreams matter too." "Do they?" she asked, a corner of her mouth curling into a soft, hesitant smile. "I want to be part of your journey. I really do, but I also need to carve out time for my own music. Sometimes I feel like I'm just an accessory in your story." This revelation struck George hard. "You're not an accessory, Emily. You're my partner in every sense. You deserve your own spotlight too." She nodded, and for a moment silence filled the space between them, heavy with their shared hopes and fears. "I think I need time to focus on my own music. There's so much I want to write and say, but I haven't allowed myself that chance." "I'll support you in whatever path you take," he promised solemnly, feeling the bittersweet pang of this moment. He wanted the best for her, yet the thought of their bond fracturing felt like a knife twisting in his gut. The next few weeks turned into an unexpected whirlwind for George. He witnessed Emily dive into her creative process with fervor, pouring her heart into writing songs that echoed her personal journey. Though proud of her, he couldn't shake the sense of something slipping away from him. The expressions, the laughter that once filled their shared moments felt like wisps of smoke in the distance. George found himself caught in a flurry of performances, channeling his emotions through music to cope with an unshakable sense of loss. The crowd was warm and welcoming, yet the closeness he had shared with Emily often tugged at his heartstrings, returning him to quiet moments of longing. One evening after a vibrant performance, George stood outside the venue, picking at his guitar strings under the flickering porch light. He could hear the distant sounds of celebration, the bar's patrons sharing drinks and stories inside, but he felt a hollowness creeping in like a shadow. As he absorbed the atmosphere, his thoughts strayed towards Emily. Tonight was an open mic she had planned to attend, yet no familiar face graced the doorway. The absence was palpable, stirring unease within his spirit. George shook his head, trying to quell the worries. He had to trust her journey even as his own felt increasingly uncertain. That evening, upon finishing another song, he had the urge to call her. The longing for connection outweighed his reservations. "Hey, Emily, it's me," he said when she picked up. "I just wanted to check in. I hope everything's going well." "It's good, George," she replied, her voice warm yet layered with hesitation. "I'm sorry I couldn't come tonight. I'm still working on some new material, and I've been really in my head about it." "I get it. Just know I miss you out there," he confessed, the sincerity infusing the airwaves between them. "You matter to me, and I want you to succeed." "Thank you," she whispered. "That means everything. I'll be at the next show for sure. I just need to explore this side of myself." As they hung up, George felt a mix of relief and confusion. After a few moments of introspection, he picked up his guitar once more. Strumming a gentle melody, he began to write about the uncertainty of love and creativity, the essence of embracing both joy and sorrow on the journey. Days turned into weeks, and the pulse of the town felt alive beneath the vibrant rhythm of summer. Yet, as the warmth of July bled into August, change loomed inevitable. Emily continued her personal quest, delving into her music, creating a soundtrack to her soul. George admired her dedication, but feared the distance drawing between them. One evening, as the stars began to dot the sky, he found himself back at the barn, lost in thought. The air smelled fresh like rain, a stark contrast to the burden he carried within. Just as he started strumming his guitar, the creaking door swung open, and Emily stepped inside, her eyes wide with inspiration. "George, you have to hear this," she said, rushing over, excitement radiating from her. With a notebook clutched under her arm, she shared a new song she had crafted. As she poured her heart out in front of him, George felt the familiar connection spark again, igniting lingering embers that refused to fade away. "Emily, that's beautiful," he said, moved. "It's raw and so real. You're incredible." "Really? You think so?" she asked, hope blooming in her eyes. George nodded with conviction, feeling relief wash over him. They spent hours discussing their respective journeys, and the lightness of that reunion reignited a bond he thought had been shadowed. Sitting together on the porch steps, basking in the cool night air, George recognized that this journey, though fraught with uncertainty, was also rife with potential. Their paths didn't need to diverge. They could intertwine, allowing each other room to grow while fostering the connection that had ignited the spark within them both. "I want us to be each other's best support, even if separately," George said tentatively. "No more silence between us when it comes to our dreams." "I want that too," Emily replied, her gaze locked on his. "The more we share, the more we grow, right?" As they sat beneath a blanket of stars, George felt solid ground re-emerge beneath his feet. The road ahead was still uncertain, but perhaps together they could navigate the crossroads of their lives, letting love and music guide their way. As the seasons turned from summer's lingering warmth to the crispness of fall, George and Emily settled into a new rhythm, both as individuals and as a couple. Their time apart had nurtured their creativity, yet together they formed a beautiful synergy, fortifying their bond through the power of music. One cool evening, George arrived at the community center, guitar in tow, ready for another open mic night. The air was fragrant with autumn leaves, the scent a reminder of change on the horizon. As he greeted familiar faces, he sensed an undercurrent of anticipation, weaving through conversations and laughter, the energy buzzing with the promise of shared stories. Tonight, he felt particularly inspired. Emily had shared her latest song with him just the night before, a haunting melody that stitched their experiences together. As he prepared to take the stage, he glanced at Emily, who stood close by, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. "Go get 'em, cowboy," she said playfully, nudging him with her shoulder. George chuckled, a rush of warmth flooding his chest. "Thanks, partner." He moved onto the stage, adjusting the mic stand, the familiar hush cascading over the crowd as he began to play the song he had been crafting, a piece reflective of their journey, filled with longing and deep connection. As the notes poured out, George's voice rang clear, echoing through the room, binding everyone together in an unspoken acknowledgement of dreams and struggles. When he finished, the applause felt electric. Stepping back from the stage, he soaked in the compliments and returned to Emily, who wrapped him in a warm hug. "That was amazing. You've really captured something special." "Thanks, but really it's more about what we've been through together," he replied, gratitude swelling within him. "Your words inspire me." As they celebrated with friends in the crowd, George felt a sense of completeness surround him, and he marveled at the love they had cultivated. Yet, as the evening drew to a close, he felt a slight shift in the atmosphere, a shadow flickering between them that he couldn't quite identify. Weeks passed, and while their connection flourished artistically, an unexplained tension began to brew beneath the surface. George noticed Emily growing distant, her laughter less frequent, her gaze lingering slightly longer on her notebook than on him. One chilly night, after a successful community concert, George sensed the unease growing palpable. They gathered on the porch, the stars twinkling above as if inviting them to share, yet silence enveloped them. Glancing sideways, he caught her biting her lip, lost in thought. "Emily, is everything okay?" he finally asked, breaking through the stillness. "You seem distracted lately." Taking a deep breath, she exhaled slowly, wariness in her voice. "I just feel like there's so much pressure. The more I write, the more I question if it's enough. I don't want to overshadow your journey. I want to be part of this, without taking too much away from you." George's heart sank at her words, and the vulnerability painted across her features. "You could never overshadow me. You inspire me," he insisted, reaching for her hand. "We've come this far together. I don't want you to feel like you have to hide or hold back. Your voice deserves the same space as mine." "I know," she replied softly, her brow knitting slightly. "But what happens when you're the one who pulls away? I've seen you getting lost in the music, and I don't want you to feel bound to me. What if I'm holding you back?" "Emily, you're not holding me back. You're part of this drive. This is our journey. We're just at different points of it," George implored, feeling a mix of frustration and urgency. "But if we don't communicate how we feel, we'll start to drift apart." "I'm scared, George," she admitted, tears glistening in her eyes. "Scared that we're on a collision course and I don't want to lose what we have." George's heart ached at her admission. He could feel the weight of the fear crushing the air between them. "What if we start fresh? Share not just in creativity, but in everything we feel?" She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I want that, but it can't just be words. We have to show it through our actions." In that moment, clarity dawned on George. They needed to confront the fears that had crept into their relationship, decisions wrapped in uncertainty. "Then, let's make a pact," he offered earnestly. "Let's promise to always be honest, stripped of fear or pretense." "Promise," she replied, a sense of resolve returning to her eyes. Despite their fears of losing each other, the honesty exchanged created a surge of warmth that shielded them from doubt. Afterward, they spent hours sharing stories, dreams, and laughter under the starry expanse above, their hearts mending as they opened the doors of communication. As the weeks rolled on, they created an alliance for their hearts and arts. Their music became intertwined even more profoundly as they cherished their vulnerability. They began collaborating. Each song they crafted together, intertwining their dreams and fears, amplifying the understanding they had fought to acquire. At one of George's upcoming performances, Emily insisted on singing alongside him. "Let's show them what we can create together," she declared, eyes gleaming. The night arrived, and as they stood together on stage, the anticipation electrified the crowd. George felt a flicker of anxious excitement ripple through him. Clenching Emily's hand, they exchanged a knowing glance. The harmony of their songs not only resonated through the venue, but also celebrated their journey together. As their voices blended, harmonizing perfectly, George could feel the weight of the world falling away. He had faced the threat of losing something precious, but together they had emerged with a resonant truth. Love and music could endure even in times of uncertainty. The applause that erupted rang with affirmation, an echo of healing and growth. Together, they forged their way through the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead, arms intertwined, souls united in perfect harmony. As autumn transitioned into winter, George and Emily found their connection as a duo solidifying. Each song they co-created was a tribute to trust and respect, echoing their experiences and deepening their bond. Their mutual support ignited a fire of creativity, and every shared moment felt rich with possibility. One evening, while they were tucked away in the barn, Emily leaned against a pile of hay. "George, I've been thinking," she began, a contemplative look on her face. "I love what we're building together, but I want to remember who we are individually. We need to nurture our own paths too." George nodded, appreciating her honesty. "Absolutely. We were both musicians before we were a couple, and both parts of us matter." Weeks flew by, and their agreement became a conscious priority. They began to dedicate time to their solo endeavors, fostering their unique identities while supporting one another. As winter settled in with its quiet serenity, George received an unexpected call from a record label interested in his music. "George, that's amazing," Emily exclaimed, her excitement genuine. Yet as the days led to the important meeting, doubt crept into George's heart. What if this opportunity altered the delicate equilibrium they had achieved? What if he lost himself, or her, in the new whirlwind? One restless night he sat beside Emily, grappling with his fears. What if I become too consumed by this? What if there's not room for us in my success? Her warm gaze met his. "We'll face it together. Remember our promise to communicate openly," she said softly. "As long as we're honest, we won't drift apart." Reassured by her words, George met with the label executives, clarity fueling his resolve. "Before I sign, I want to ensure I have the freedom to create what resonates with me. My music is about authenticity, and that includes my relationship with Emily. He could see appreciation reflected in their eyes as they agreed to his terms. Relief washed over him, knowing he would not compromise his integrity or their partnership. That evening, as he returned home, he found Emily waiting in the barn, her guitar cradled in her lap. The moment their eyes met, he felt a surge of gratitude. "They accepted my conditions," he said, smiling broadly, "and I'm able to keep my creative spirit intact." "Fantastic," Emily cheered, springing to her feet and engaging him in a warm embrace that felt like a long-awaited promise fulfilled. "I knew you could do this." "But," he hesitated, softening his tone, "I want you to be involved every step of the way. I can't imagine this journey without you." Emily smiled, the love in her eyes shining brightly. "We'll navigate this together, just like we promised." In the warmth of that barn, surrounded by a tapestry of their melodies and shared dreams, George felt a deep sense of optimism. They could support each other in the pursuit of their individual passions while remaining unified in their love. As they ventured into the unknown, armed with a shared understanding, they embraced the potential of new beginnings. George recognized that their connection was not just about their music, it was about the strength of their partnership that would allow them to weather any storm together. Together they began a new chapter, one that celebrated their distinct identities, reaffirmed their love, and paved the way for their artistic growth. Hand in hand, hearts open wide, George and Emily were ready to compose the next beautiful verse of their journey, knowing that the road ahead was an adventure they would share, harmonizing in every step along the way.